and welcome to Analysts Gone Wild. It's July 24th. I can't believe we're past the midway part of the year. Episode 27, how we're going to analyze some very successful or non-successful enterprise stories today. Robert Cray with more insights and strategy. We have Shashish and Donald and Sam on the line. Great guys. We're going to kind of go through it all together. Why don't we all introduce ourselves, starting with Shashish? Tell us where you're at today, what's going on, and how you feeling.
Great. No, thank you all. Really happy to be on this call with such great experts. I'm probably going to learn more from the panelists. And I say this every week, which is actually very true.
We learn from you.
Yeah, exactly.
I work for the Infotech Research Group, but my opinions on this call are not necessarily reflecting the opinions of the company that I work for. Enterprise software is a very complicated space. So I think there's a lot of good feedback that comes out of this. I'm really happy that some of the audience reached back to us and asked us their opinions on what they can do better. So a lot of value on this call. I'm really happy to be there. Thanks,
Thank
Sam,
you.
Robert, and Donald.
Hey, Donald, how you doing today? What's going on?
I am great. Thank you very much. Yeah, doing well. So I'm Donald. I have my own consultancy, TreeHive Strategy. I specialize in data and analytics, and of course, inevitably AI strategy. Talking with primarily with software vendors, because I'm a product guy. I was at Microsoft for years and at Click Technologies, so my background is in building products, and now I advise software vendors, and I'm a research fellow for TDWI, and I do a lot of writing and speaking. And I'm excited. Today I am going to be Mr. Positive. I'm always the cynical, kind of slightly negative, critical view. And today everything is blooming in the garden of technology, and I'm going to be positive for the first 5 minutes.
Good stuff there. Okay, so Sam, what we got with you?
Yeah, so I mean, overall, in terms of feeling, as you know, Robert, these days the only thing I can talk about is Blue Jays, because something like this, we have not seen. For us. Exactly. And Donald, to your point related to being positive, I guess you are the one who really coined the term "analyst gone grumpy." I guess which was a hit, to be completely honest. So great job there. Great job there. But overall, Sen Gupta, Elevate IQ. Our focus is enterprise software. For the most part, we cover most of the categories: ERP, CRM, business applications. Robert, over to you.
Well, we'll get into some discussions on AI and how it relates to sports and the Toronto Blue Jays, maybe as we get a little bit more into it, because hopefully, like you said, they're in the acquiring mode this year, and I'm sure AI is kind of being used to figure out from a Moneyball perspective which players to take and which makes the best bang for the buck to trade. Anyway, let's get into our first story. We'll talk a little bit about. I think this is a pretty expansive subject, and we've always talked about ERP, and we like talking about ERP and legacy systems and how they're going to be supported. And this kind of shows the extension of support, specifically with the enormous amount of customers still on premise and how that is tackled for the long term. And it kind of brings up a bigger story of what I think is going to happen long term is there's going to be a complete revamp of ERP systems, where it's going to model after not only just AI, but the human robot collaboration a little bit different than it does today. But what is this? I would ask the question, what does this mean for what I just said? And then if you look from the bottom up, not the top down, which I just did, how it relates to customers that are going slow with this adoption of transformation to the cloud.
I can start if you guys want. So one thing that I always believe, from the marketing perspective is if there is going to be a pitch, there will always be a counter pitch as well, which is what makes marketing really interesting. You are never going to have a case where somebody is pitching for a cause and you are never going to have the counter strategy. Some company, somebody will come up with something and that will happen. And in this case, that's what is happening. Okay, so obviously, from the enterprise software vendor perspective, their interest is that I don't want to support legacy software. But the way these maintenance companies make money is they want to support as much as possible because that's how they make money. So this is the counter story. Now the question is going to be whether it is good for the customer. Obviously, they both are going to argue that they both are right. In certain cases, it might make sense when you have customers and they are not necessarily in a position to switch. So Rimini may be the right guy, I guess, because they are supporting and they are not necessarily pushing these customers. But at the same time, I mean, being on an old software is not necessarily good either. Guys are guaranteeing that we'll provide you all the regulatory support. I don't know how confident they are going to be from the cyber perspective, but obviously this is a very big company, so hopefully they are going to support from that perspective as well. So I don't know who's right, but I mean, I find these stories very interesting in general.
I have kudos to the marketing team who created this, right? Because I think they hit the right points that even I'm necessarily not very entrenched like probably Sam, Donald, and even Robert on this. But I can understand, like, number one is, hey, if you have a budget constraint and you really don't need to think about a change because we'll keep on letting you operate, I think is a very good and clear message that was there, right? Also, it kind of assuages the tension that the CIO may be having. I don't have budget and I need to replace this old software. I need a couple of years. What do I do? So messaging wise, I thought this was really good.
I agree with that. I think marketing did a good job out of it. One of the things we're always talking about new technology, and of course we're all very enthusiastic about new technology, and it's so easy for us to overlook the value of something that just works.
Yeah.
And this is, Gartner, I think I've said, the 60% of customers just stay on their on-premises solution of no intention. Not even that they're not moving to HANA yet. They're just got no intention of moving to HANA because what they've got works for them. And there's tremendous value in that. And of course we love the latest technologies. And, they love the latest technologies too, but they're not going to change what works. This is why my sister still makes a lot of money as a COBOL programmer. There's still lots of systems out there that just work, and why change them?
Well, there's a lot of reasons to change, but still, this acts as a crutch for them, I think, and enables not them being progressive to modernize, which I think will be a gigantic part. And Sam, just as your take on this, like, do they need to modernize now, or do they need to wait for the massive change in ERP, which will come in the next 5 to 10 years, and wait for that? Because I think that each industry should sit on its own, because some of them are slower than others.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that critical element of modernization is necessary for other industries. So this brings up a necessary evil, but at the same time, that has to happen, whether they're being supported internally with a team of programmers or with a company like Rimini. So, Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, so I will say, from the customer's perspective, they like these stories. And the reason for that is because they don't like any sort of push. Okay. Don't tell me that my software is old. Let me decide on my own. If my software is old, I'll switch. Just don't push it. That's why they like these stories. Now, is it in their best interest? That could be debatable, I would say. Obviously, software vendors want their customers to do well. I mean, obviously, they are not necessarily trying to screw up their customers. I mean, that's not how it works. But at the same time, I guess, I mean, they appreciate these stories because they don't like that push. Sometimes the economy is not going to support, whether they can undertake 5-year-long project, that kind of investment. So for customers, I would say it's easier. Again, I would say, I don't know whether that is in their best interest. In my mind, and to your point, in the next 5 years, when you are going to have the AI push and AI-driven user experience, it's going to be very different. Right now, they are probably not even on the cloud. And now AI is going to change the game completely. So I don't know what is right, to be completely honest. But I mean, technology is changing rapidly. So in my mind, you need to have your upgrade cycle. You definitely don't want to wait for 30 years because that could be substantially backdated.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would want to say is that the companies who are not moving, who are not migrating just now, aren't necessarily not innovative. In fact, this announcement from Rimini Street does give them some sort of financial relief to innovate in other areas. And I think that's important. They might not be innovating under core ERP, but they'll innovate in other areas. The people who'll be unhappy about this are SAP, who of course do want people to migrate. They do want to see them move up. So that'll be an interesting component of this relationship. But I don't think we should think that this means the companies aren't innovative. I think it simply frees up capital for them to innovate in other places.
Yeah, and I don't think we're saying that. I think they're also have an enormous fear to modernize. I think it's a challenging subject. I mean, most companies have more than one ERP. These ERPs need to be simplified in a way that it's going to work for them. I mean, they might be running 6, 8 ERPs, and it's $100 billion, manufacturing facility, and it's not going to be easy. So some of this is a fear factor that is a massive undertaking. So, Sam, I know that you have an enormous amount of experience in this sector, and what do you advise your customers from this area?
Yeah, so I guess I'll make one comment on Donald's comment. So there is always a fine line between what's innovation versus, what's automating your broken processes. And when you are going to have the underlying constraints such as your mainframe or very outdated systems, sometimes you are not even realizing that you are automating broken processes. So a lot of customers and obviously vendors argue that, hey, you don't have to change your ERP, you can innovate around that. Okay, but that's a drag in my personal experience. So, ERP vendors are not completely off when they suggest that you need to have some sort of upgrade cycle. I'm not saying that you need to have every 5 years, but maybe 10 years. Don't wait for 30 years because that's just too much. Technology changes substantially in that time span. So that will be a too much drag. And even if you're feeling that you are innovating, you are probably not. So that would be my comment on that.
Okay, there are a couple of comments in the comment section. I just wanted to answer. Hey, Brett, I think this is probably targeted, in my opinion, to their existing customers. And I think companies have realized that the best revenue that you can get is from your existing customers. So we may not be thinking about new customers. Hey, they might get new customers, but this is targeted toward their existing customers and will extend their life with Rimini Street.
But one of the I guess if you go to the next one, talks about you can't leverage AI or innovation. I mean, it's definitely a key component to modernize for that. I mean, if you think about all the supply chain optimizations and inventory control and just massive compliance opportunities to take advantage of. I mean, a company that doesn't modernize basically has some issues with their ERP system or multiple ERP systems that would negate it being a positive move for them. I would think that would be some of the issues.
Yep.
I think that's fair, but I think my point would still be that these companies are, although they're not necessarily modernizing their core ERP, and I agree that there's a lot of value in doing that, but there's a lot of risk involved in it too. But they may still be modernizing and innovating in other areas. And I think I agree that we're going to see this dramatic change in ERPs over the next few years. If I was running an enterprise, I think I would be tempted to hold off and see what the future of ERP is over the next few years, in case I have to make another substantial investment, in just in a few years.
Yeah, I don't think we're a few years away. I think we're like 5, but I think it's going to be a massive change, and I think that it's not ready to be released yet. I think it's going to be going in a very interesting direction. Maybe we can have a show just on that, Sam, but I think there's a lot.
We should.
There.
Yeah, we definitely should.
There's a lot.
There's a lot, but I do think that you're right that do you need to do it now or wait? My suggestion would be both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there's a very important point that you made, Sam. That you made, that the companies don't just run one ERP. You talk to companies who have SAP, they don't say we run on SAP. We have instances of SAP. There's a possibility of upgrading in different ways. And I think that's actually super important. We can do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sam, anything else, or
so let's touch on some more comments. We have a lot of comments, so make sure we need to make sure we are covering them. First of all, hello, Brad, for joining. And we don't have the name of the user, so I don't know if there is a way to turn it on or let us know. We always like to know who's in the audience. Always like to meet and say hello to you. If you could do that, we'll sincerely appreciate that. So here, clients definitely need to modernize. I would say that's debatable. I think that's what the room is agreeing with. And then we have one more comment here. So he or she is saying they will not be able to leverage AI in innovation. You are right. I mean, I don't think on-prem is going to get any sort of AI innovation unless some other consulting companies are going to create AI innovation on top of mainframe. That's always a possibility, but that'll be a little trickier, I would say. Okay, so one more comment from Brad. So interesting that Rimini Street believes that there is a large enough market dollar to make this announcement. Oh boy, I mean, this is definitely very large. I mean, they're a very large company, and I would say in terms of the number of customers, they don't have as many. But they are crushing it. They are probably as big as one of the ERP vendors. So there's definitely money in that. Okay, so I think that's it for the comments. So I'm going to go back to our next story. Is that what you want, Robert?
Yeah, that sounds good. We got Zencoder.
Yeah.
So they're launched. I guess they're launching Zentester, AI-powered testing agent. I'm not sure if this is substantial or not. I know it saves a lot of time and is a big deal from a testing perspective. But anything that we need to uncover on this one that we think is going to, modernize some of the coding that's being done, or I guess the agents that are being created?
I look at it in two ways. Number one is with engineers using a lot of AI for coding, right? There's validation is probably going to be a big task for them. So if this agent can do that, that's really good. The second part of it, just traditional QA that companies do for new releases and everything else. I think it'll be difficult right now for AI or any of these agents to replace it because there's so much of institutional knowledge that the QA teams have. So it can only be an assistant and not necessarily a replacement, in my opinion. Again, just talking about messaging, it seems like this week's episode we have a lot of good marketing teams sending out messaging because again, it's quite easy to understand what they're talking about without using too much of hype or other terms that people don't understand.
Yeah. So in my personal experience, when I look at this story, Robert, overall in terms of the relevance, whether this is substantial or not, in my mind, I would say testing is one of the areas where we are going to get the maximum value from AI initiatives. And the reason for that is because testing was very redundant, procedural, manual, the way testing space is in general. And AI, in general, agentic applications are going to be far more intelligent to be able to test the boundaries of an application, definitely do the job that the majority of the QA folks did for the most part. Now, when you draw the line between your ERP applications versus the traditional applications. And when I say traditional, I didn't mean legacy. I meant the other, applications that are going to be slightly user-focused, e-commerce, technical development, product development, etc. The testing for that is very different from the implementation side of things. And even today, if you look at the ERP implementations, okay, or business software for the most part, the testing is predominantly manual. Can you believe this? Even though we have had these automated tools for the last maybe 20 years, because the manual effort always is better then automating them. Automating always feels that you are putting more effort and you are getting very little value from that. And I have personally tried that. It doesn't work, to be completely honest. Okay. So now with AI workflows, there is going to be a real play here where you can actually test the ERP application, because now mimicking human behavior is far easier with the agentic application. So I see that, now the implementation is going to change completely. That is going to change the consulting industry, because if you look at 90% of the business software implementation, even if they are going to be 10-year long, I would say 40-50% effort is probably in testing. So now if that is going to be done by agentic application, this makes it really interesting. That changes the whole consulting industry. This changes the game for the implementation, because now we are going to have faster implementation.
I agree. Good stuff. Do you think this differentiates them at all in the DevOps space from an automation perspective?
You mean Zencoder?
Yep.
So I'm not entirely familiar, with the automated testing space. I would say there are some traditional players, and I don't know, how capable they are in the AI native agentic capabilities. I'm not too familiar with Zencoder either. So I would say there's going to be a decent market here, which is going to have a lot of players. And I guess the traditional players were Zentester. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They are very famous in the SAP ecosystem for the automated testing. And then obviously you have some of the real automated testing player. They were not necessarily in the ERP space.
I've also heard of another company called Catalan.
Yeah,
it's also in this space. So I feel there's a lot of potential here, and it's also so critical, like Sam said, that you have to get it right. One place where I know AI can really help is when companies have like legacy, like something has gone wrong 10 years ago, there's no guarantee that won't go wrong today, right? So if you think about AI as analyze, predict, and then generate, I think it can actually look at all the data and say, hey, have you looked into this, and predict where things could go wrong, so that the other agents or even human agents can actually prioritize looking at that.
Good points.
Yeah, I'm trying very hard not to be Mr. Grumpy here, but I may need to. But as a product guy, I got to say, and I said at the beginning when I'm a product guy for a very long time, I am troubled a little bit at this, because testing is not QA. Testing is not quality assurance. It's a component of the quality assurance process, and it's actually a relatively small component of the quality assurance process, because the most important part of testing is the development of the tests.
Yeah.
Now, how do you know that your tests are appropriate? How do you know they're the right tests? How do you know you have the right criteria? And to a certain extent, automatically generating tests in the same way as vibe coders automatically generate code doesn't give that discipline that ensures that you're running the right tests. And that's where quality assurance comes in. How do you know that this is the right test suite? I think there's a lot of excitement. I mean, I think there's some good stuff here. Don't get me wrong. It's built on the Playwright platform. Playwright is a framework for automated testing. So Zencoder aren't building this from scratch. It's built over Playwright framework, which I think is a well-established framework for automated testing. So that's good, but it doesn't solve this problem of how do I know that the tests that I'm automating are actually the right tests. And that comes back to the same problem as we have with vibe coding. How do I know I'm building the right stuff? So easy to build stuff. Now it's so easy to test stuff. So I like all of this except the headline that this turns vibe coding into enterprise-grade engineering. No, this provides automated testing for vibe coding, but it doesn't turn it into enterprise-grade engineering. So I'm kind of enthusiastic, and at the same time, I don't think it achieves what it's claiming to achieve.
So the fine line between telling the truth and attracting attention.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, why don't we? Anything else, Sam? Should we move on to the next one?
No, I think this is pretty good. We can move to the next one. Yeah.
So we have Acorn. They've I guess secured 12.3 million Series A funding. They are a learning and development SaaS company. They do training for everyday workflows. From my perspective, I don't think this is that big of a deal. It's not a lot of money, but I guess it will help the customers and development, help the customers with more, I guess, as they scale more details or more, I guess, advanced features and capabilities, and allow the company itself, Acorn, to keep on developing. What do you guys think? Is this how does this pass the test of fluff, or is this something that is we all want to hear?
EdTech is good, isn't it? It's a good space. You know what I like about this is Acorn are now they're based in Vancouver and Vancouver, Canada, and Australia. So this is not a. So that's kind of interesting to me that this is a pretty good round to be raised for a company that's based in Canada and Australia. I think that's good. And also for EdTech, it actually shows that, EdTech is surprisingly generalizable across different education systems. It used to be educational technology that you saw, things like Blackboard and things like that, were very specific to the educational system that they were designed for. Couldn't you really use a US technology in Europe? You couldn't really use European technology in the US. I think the development of AI-based EdTech is actually much more international. And there probably educationists would have something to say about that, but I find it pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think, again, I've talked to a few vendors in this space for learning and development, and personalizing and customizing the training required through signals within the company is actually a great thing if they're doing this. But in terms of the messaging itself, I would probably take the last bullet and put it up, because why would your customer care other than the fact that some VC has validated that you have a viable business model, right? But then VCs don't necessarily always look at everything. They're just trying to, it's a raffle for them, right? 5 out of 25 companies or whatever the statistic is will succeed. So I like the last part, actually tells me what they do. The capabilities part is good. And then, just say like, hey, we got validation not only from our customers, but through this funding round, is the way I would position this.
Yeah, so this is very interesting, and the way I always like to look at these things is, how the market is moving, right? I mean, that's always going to be my focus, I guess, in my commentary. So overall, when I look at this, and Donald, you are right that this is somewhere in the ed tech space, but if you look at the enterprise software application, the right positioning of them is going to be the LMS category, and that is the branch of HRIS, ACM software. Generally, that is going to be clubbed as part of that. So now you have a lot of HRIS vendor, you have the ERP vendor, some of them sort of, package these LMS offering as part of their offering. So obviously we all know one thing, that everything is going to become some sort of AI native, AI sort of augmented offering in the future. So this is a very exciting announcement, because now we are talking about some AI native offerings. Now the existing vendors, are they going to catch up with these guys, or are these guys going to become market leader? So that's going to be a question. I don't know, and that's why VCs are after these investments, because they feel that they can overtake the market of the existing players, because they are probably going to be slower. They have to please their existing customers. They are going to be much harder to, persuade and adopt. And so they have a real shot here in beating them. So that's what I see in this story. I think this is very exciting. And this is aligned to how the market is moving overall from the AI perspective.
That's a great point. I think I would have been more enthusiastic about what you're saying if it was more than one investor. I think Level Equity putting in the 12 million, that lead investor, that kind of investor concentration on a company of this size and at this stage of growth, it can be a very good thing if that investor is active and well informed in the market and very supportive. But it can also kind of hold them back in some ways if that investor is not is not active and supportive. So interesting to see where this will go. But also as this market consolidates, this market just now is very diverse, consolidate. It'll be really interesting. Not even a question necessarily of market leaders, as where does the consolidation happen? I would be interested to see, for example, probably in about a year's time, when you start to see the consolidation, the M&As in this space, where Acorn ends up there. Are they going to be acquired, or are they going to be, by that point, one of the acquirers? And I would hope that this helps them to become one of the acquirers in the long term, but let's see.
I think, Sam, what you just said could have been their first thing about like what is the landscape and why is this important, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking forward to seeing that in one of our some savvy marketing team actually starting off with, hey, here's the landscape, here's what we solve, here's why this landscape is important, and that's why we've got customers and funding.
Yeah, I don't know what is the right way of doing the press releases, because obviously they need to be 300 words. So I don't know how much context you can put in there. But yeah, I mean, if they have that, I think that's going to be a much exciting pitch, for the investors as well as for the readers, because they know that we are talking about market movement here. That's not just, $12 million, which is nothing when you talk about these companies.
All right. Well, anything else on this topic? Should we go to the next one?
Yeah, let's go to the next
Go to
one.
the next one.
Did you have something, Donald? Did you want to
Nope,
jump?
nope, that's good. No.
Okay. So this one's kind of interesting. This company released their MCP server for agentic retrieval. I'm not tremendously familiar with them, but I believe they provide search capabilities for different websites. Is that correct, Sam?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little brief overall in terms of their positioning. So I guess these guys were born with the whole movement of this headless commerce. Is probably the right term, or the composable commerce is probably another term. For the most part, their value prop is going to be that they are going to be slightly more best of breed in the composable situation from the search perspective. And in general, for the commerce, when you look at the digital experience, the search matters a lot. So their core positioning was, hey, I'm the best search engine ever created, and take us. And once you have that, then I'm going to give you faster results on the website, and I'm going to have much higher conversion. So that was their value prop. Over to you, Robert.
So I think this is a pretty significant, I guess, release for them, or just that they have their first MCP server to help with the governance. And I would think the searches would be even a lot more positioned or more relevant. Donald and Shashish, what do you think of this? And do you guys familiar with this company?
Actually, Donald, you go first. I have some ideas, but I'll go after you.
Yeah, I think actually the characterization of them as playing in the headless commerce space, I think that's a great characterization. I think when you look at MCP and agentic, I mean, I in some ways this is not news. They should be doing this. This is an absolutely, if you're in this space, you should be developing an MCP server. MCP is described as what they call it, the USB-C of agentic software, the kind of universal connector. Although I don't know if you use USB-C, there's always this question of it. Do you use it for charging or data transfer? I think there's still some open questions but around that metaphor. But I think the fact that this enables the agents to, do things like, trigger new workflows, for example. One of the things that Algolia has had before around its kind of around its agentic systems that it had earlier was the agents were somewhat self-contained. And this opening up of the agents to a much wider ecosystem, what they call kind of context aware, I think is actually really useful. But my concern with it, and I think I think when I see people using MCP as this kind of universal USB-C style connector, is that doesn't necessarily remove the complexity of integration. There's still some, especially in the financial space, there's some really interesting things around security and audit, rollback of transactions, anything like that you have to do. MCP doesn't necessarily make that easier. It's a connector, but being able to exchange information between systems also requires an extra level of integration to be done on top of that. There's that process integration, not just a technical integration. And I'd like to see how Algolia tackle that. But overall, I think this is pretty promising.
Yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot more of the MCP server integration. Last week, part of a briefing with Zoho, and they, along with their LLM, they also introduced an MCP server. Long term, I think this is very important. And the reason being, like today, despite your having AI, if you wanted to plan a trip, I think one of the examples here is also about the trip. Your agent is still going to do a search just like a human would say, like, hey, let me go to the airline, let me go and use the search box on the airline. But the future, and I think I believe it's a high possibility, is your Amazon or your e-commerce agent that is very personal to you is going to go and find the right seller. To find the right seller, it is actually quite a bad thing if they're going to a website and search, go to every page and look at it, which Manus kind of does today if you want something. But if they can connect, give permission to agents to connect to their database that is anyway public facing using an MCP protocol, it will make their e-commerce much more quicker, or it will provide the information to the end user much more quicker. But like Donald said, like you have to take care of every like security protocol. It's not just connected to an MCP server and do that. So this is basically looking at a world of my agent is going to talk to your agent, your agents, and my agent is going to determine who I should do business with. So this is quite a good announcement, I think.
It is, I certainly don't disagree with that at all. I think it is a good announcement, but it does. This is generally true in the MCP space, that this now opens up technical integration, but also some new vulnerabilities around things like policy enforcement and monitoring, safe delegation. And this is not a criticism of Algolia. I'm just generally not hearing enough conversation about that, rather about the policy aspects of MCP, as opposed to the technical aspects, which seem to be straightforward and very positive.
That's true. Hey, Sam, I wanted to say hello to the audience on Instagram. Usually people don't think of enterprise conversations on Instagram. So this is an experiment we are trying. So hello, everybody on Instagram. Please comment if you think this topic is useful for you.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Shashi, that if you're listening to this show right now on Instagram, please comment so that we know that you are listening, and we would love to hear comments from you as well. So I'll provide some more comments here, I guess, based on your comments. And for the most part, I guess this is a very interesting discussion. So Robert, in my mind, when I look at this release, and I'm always looking at comparing different stories, looking at market alignment, how every single vendor is sort of moving. So in my mind, this was the first one that I have seen that any vendor is actually releasing their MCP server. Now Sashi sort of broke their thunder, because now he's saying that Zoho is also doing that. So Zoho is probably the second one who has announced that they are releasing their MCP server as well. And again, in my case, I'm doing AI 101, so I'm not as qualified to comment on AI stories, I guess. I'm still trying to figure out, where LLM sort of fits and where MCP fits, where AI agents fit. But the way I see it overall from the market alignment perspective, and 90% of the companies right now, if you look at them, they all are either releasing AI agents. There are very few that are really rich, that are also releasing LLM. In Zoho's case, they might not be as rich, but somehow they have figured out, they can release pretty much anything and everything in this world. So in their case, they're releasing LLM. Now, when I look at MCP is going to be extra context. That's my understanding of MCP. That you have your own database, or you want to augment the capabilities of LLM from the context perspective. You can probably utilize, that from the MCP perspective. But overall, from the product release perspective, I didn't realize that you could actually release your MCP platform or MCP server, because in my mind, this would be more of the platform strategy. So the way I like to see this as, if you look at the traditional segmentation, maybe AI agents are more like SaaS. This is more of the platform as a service strategy, where you are allowing others to, build on top of your data, your services, along with the LLM. You are not necessarily developing LLM, but in other cases, you are also developing the LLM. So now, if you look at OpenAI has announced that they are also launching their AI agents. So their positioning is going to be, hey, I'm providing you infrastructure, but I'm also going to provide the agents, because agents are the one who are going to make more money from the telecom analogy perspective, right? So that's why they are getting into this business. So that's how I see it. I don't know if you guys have more comments there.
You heard it first here on Analysts Gone Wild. There's going to be a website-less world, where your traditional, let me go to this website and look for information, is going away. So companies have to build the same amount of content, but they'll have to build it to how the consumers want it. So I think this will be a good step on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the end of
imagine
the
a
web
websiteless world. It's going to disrupt a lot of jobs at least.
Well, the end of search is definitely already happening. Search and SEO is almost a dead market. It's now agent and AI optimization rather than search engine optimization. And I think you're right. I think websites, to a certain extent, commercial websites start to kind of go away at that point as well. Yeah, it's exciting times.
Well, I think the next subject is a pretty interesting one if we want to hit that one. So Aravo enhances their evaluate engine. This is a really interesting subject because it deals with vendor risk management and third-party performance. I think it's a big deal to understand, who you're working with and really the different risks that could be from a magnitude of different things, from compliance to cybersecurity to onboarding to anything that deals with the vendor data privacy, things of that nature. So I would always think this would be a hot topic, but let's get your guys to all weigh in. Thoughts?
I'll start. If you guys don't want
to. And expand it a little bit, Sam. Where does this hit, and where is it going to go? Because the future of systems might be needing things like this a little bit more.
Yeah. So I guess, when I look at this story, so in this case, Robert, I'm probably going to have comment, how significant and relevant this is, to be completely honest. If you compare this with the other stories and the vendors, the amount of work that they are doing, because 90% of them are focusing on AI-centric features. Here, obviously, this is a very traditional risk management solution, and there are a lot of them. This is not the only one that we have. And they have obviously added some features and functions, which is great. But everybody is sort of going for the AI-centric capabilities, and I don't see that here. So that's where I'm going to say, is this still relevant? I don't know. So that would be my take on this.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Donald. I can go after you.
Well, I was just going to say that I think it's relevant for very traditional risk managers. But that's probably a shrinking market. So it's highly relevant to a shrinking market. It's perhaps the best way to put it.
Why do you think it's shrinking? Aren't we always going to have vendors?
Yeah, we're always going to have vendors. We're always going to have risk management. But to Sam's point, I think AI is significantly taking over some of the role of risk management. I've been writing quite a bit about risk management recently, and one thing that talking to risk managers about that, they have found it very complex to look across multi-domain risks and come up with a sort of single number. They want to report a single number. They're also going to ask, what is the risk of this of this operation? And to come up with a single number is kind of difficult when it's cross domains. I think this idea of being able to visualize it, I think the idea of being able to do the kind of custom coloring so people at a glance can get a kind of gut feel for what the risk is, I think that's actually very compelling if you are that traditional risk manager. But what I'm seeing increasingly is people trying to offload the cognitive offloading of that kind of risk management onto an AI system and enable AI agents or an AI system to handle that complexity and come up with a number or come up with an evaluation that then the risk manager can use as a sort of AI-driven gut feel of where they are in risk. That's really what I'm saying.
Well, it's definitely going in that direction. So I don't think the market's going away for the need for the vendor risk management, but I think it's going to be more involved, obviously, from it with AI. So
exactly, yeah.
Before I comment on this, just wanted to say hi to Venkata Nagesh Burragada. I think he has a comment about our previous MCP one. He says, provide better control on the data and data strategies. I think he's absolutely right. He's not even used the word AI, but it is definitely true, right? Thanks, Venkat. On this Aravo thing, from risk management perspective, there are a few conflicts within companies, and the conflicts are the person who cares about risk is probably the board, the CEO, and whoever is the risk and compliance executive there. But very often, like, the IT and technology team has to manage whatever software they use. For them, it's much easier to turn on something that they may already have, like Microsoft Purview if they're a Microsoft shop. So I think companies that are catering to this space have got to look at both educating IT, educating the board, educating the leadership, plus making it easy for the compliance manager to do what Donald said they should be doing. Meaning it's not only just your platform, there are so many other cross-platform domains, right, that you should be using. In terms of messaging, I think Aravo did a good job with this. It was very easy to understand what they're releasing and how they're doing it, and very less hype words in it, I think.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to double down on Donald's comment about this being shrinking market, to be completely honest. Okay, and the reason why I really believe this is because let's say tomorrow we are going to get another story from another vendor, and that's going to be AI native risk management vendor. Okay, now think about that for a second. If a VC or the private equity company is investing in that company, what's going to happen to this company? Is this really innovation? I would doubt. So that's where I do think that this is probably going to be a shrinking market. And overall, when they are arguing about innovation, let's say if you are incorporating any sort of AI risk, I think that's a point that Donald was trying to make. Then you are doing the real innovation, but I don't know if they are doing that. So that's also a question here. Overall from the model or the score innovation perspective, because the amount of risks have increased substantially, I guess, with AI. So obviously all of the risk management platforms, they need to accommodate those risks as well. But at the same time, those AI native platforms, they are probably going to have those capabilities as well. So again, this is more of the catch-up play in my mind. Yeah.
I have a question for all of you. Could this also be handled by enterprise architecture software?
So I can respond to that. So I don't know if there is going to be overlap between this category and the enterprise architecture software category. This is more of the supply chain risk management function. The target user for this is going to be supply chain folks. Generally for the enterprise architecture software, the audience is going to be CIOs and the IT folks. So they might do a little bit of IT risk management, but they don't necessarily do the real vendor risk management or the supply chain risk management. So these two are completely different, categories, I guess, even though both of them are doing a little bit of risk management.
Then I withdraw my comments on this messaging being good, because nowhere do they mention supply chain risk management.
Well, I think your IT risk management is slightly specialized, but this is certainly sort of more generic kind of vendor risk management. But yeah, I think we would probably agree that this market is disappearing a little bit, but the business function still remains important, even though the market for the specialized software may be
that's a good point.
Declining.
Yeah. We'll see how it's embedded into the new ERP, Sam, right?
I mean, ERPs are going to have some sort of risk management function as well. It's just that they are not going to have the external data. It's probably not going to be as good, and that's why they need something like this. Yep. It's much easier sales cycle as well, and the buying cycle.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's hit the next one, and then we'll probably wrap up after that. So this deals with supply chain risk management, and they announced some enhancements. Avetta, I'm not too familiar with them, but from my perspective, this is a positive move because obviously they're enhancing features and functionality. Does this benefit the customers? I would think so too. Is this something that we think is a main headline? I would say probably not. Thoughts, questions?
So my take on this is going to be very similar to the previous one. And, I was really thinking that maybe we found AI story, the one that I was mentioning. And the other story is going to become irrelevant. But in this case, they both might be competitors, I guess. And they both are probably going to be part of the shrinking market that, Donald is claiming. And I think he's right. So in this case as well, again, I don't think this story is exciting anymore. This is a very similar story. These two vendors are doing the similar things, which is great because the whole industry is doing similar things. They are just not innovating. But if one competitor is going to innovate, then everybody's probably going to play the catch-up game with them.
Wouldn't you think that they want to get bought out by a larger company to take some of their ingredients of how their toolkits and get that embedded into the larger packages and have AI control these types of innovations or outcomes that they're doing?
So supply chain space is very interesting, Robert. The way supply chain space is structured, you have a lot of consulting companies, you have a lot of 3PLs, which are not traditional technology vendors, but they have a lot of tools in their portfolio just to do the client service for them. Right. So when you talk about the acquisition of these guys, who is going to acquire them? Sometimes these 3PL and the consulting companies are acquiring them as well. But again, I mean, depending upon who is acquiring and what is their motivation. If their motivation is going to be to retain 40-year-old market the way Rimini is approaching, that's a great strategy because you have a ton of money in that market as well. It's not necessarily bad. It's a counter pitch. So, again, depending upon the strategy, I would say, who's acquiring and what they are trying to do with the technology.
Yeah, well, I think we're saying the same thing, but at the same time, the features and functionalities that they're doing will need to be there at some point in time for these companies to make decisions on risk with vendors, and whether they use external software like this or it's embedded. I think it's here nor there. It's part of the issue that they're always going to need it, or not the issue. I know that you guys say it's going to go away with AI, but it still has to be there.
It gets much more complicated with AI because when I look at this, if you look at safety manuals and the audit of safety manuals in supply chain, which is actually kind of interesting topic, safety manuals are going away. Who has a safety manual anymore? What we have is a bot in front of typically today, what you have is your safety manual is vectorized, loaded up into a RAG system, and now you put a bot in front of it. But increasingly, people are generating safety manuals, not as manuals, but as policies, which are detailed policies, which are vectorized and used with a bot in front. So the idea of having a single document that represents your entire safety policy in a way that can be audited is actually, that's going away. So what we're going to see in the future is something that is much more like a set of safety policies that have to be audited. And I wonder if we end up with a protocol for documentation that enables us to audit documentation in a way right across the supply chain. And that wouldn't just be safety documentation, include all the other operating procedures of a supply chain, including all the other risks in the supply chain, including things like temperature controlled operations, if that's what to happen. But it seems to me that this is a method of auditing a technology that itself going away. So does that make sense?
Are you partial to supply chain news?
Oh yeah, we're all at the end of a supply chain, so we're all at the start of a supply chain. So
All right. Well, what do you think, Sam?
Yeah, so I guess let's touch on this comment, and I don't know. If I mention the 80% of your data, or where is that comment coming from? Sometimes I don't even remember what I say. So if I said it, you need to provide a little bit more context. Where is this comment coming from? And I want to make sure that we address that.
How do you get in 85% of your data that's external?
Did we say that, or? Okay, so nobody knows.
I think this may refer to the previous. I think this might be referring to the previous conversation, actually.
Yeah, and I would say, there might be layers to this comment. In some cases, there might be data that might be 85% external. Let's say if you are dependent upon industry data a lot more. For example, let's say if you go to automotive-centric companies, they use a lot more external data in general because their planning is dependent upon the whole industry, the way they operate. So in some cases, that might be the case, but I don't know. There could be layers to this comment. So that's how I would respond. But if you could provide more context, who said it and in which context, I guess we can provide more colors to it.
To be
We ran
clear,
through a
the
lot of
claim that
stories.
85% of your data is external data.
Yeah.
That's an external data point. So anyway.
All right. Well, let's Stan, should we go? Let's go through a wrap up here. I think I need more questions or thoughts on this topic. No. Okay. So tell us what you're going to do this weekend. Anything new going on in your lives? You going to use AI at all to get anything done? It's going to help you in your life this weekend, or we're going to put our phones and our computers down and just enjoy the sun. Shashish,
Actually, we're going to
what about
enjoy the stars. We are driving down to the Shenandoah Valley. There's a part of the sky that's really dark. So instead of the sun, we'll see the moon this weekend.
So no AI.
No AI.
Okay. Donald,
Actually, maybe AI, because one of the best uses I have of AI is identify something that I don't know about. Right. So Google Lens is usually a very good way to do that.
good. Donald?
I am in the middle of a really complicated legal matter. Not a bad one, but just a very, very complicated one. And if AI could help me with that, I would be thoroughly delighted, because it would save me an enormous amount of money. I could just get ChatGPT to do it all rather than my very expensive attorney. That would be a relief.
Well,
so wish me luck with that.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice to put the
good luck.
computers and the phones down to kind of get a breath of fresh air and kind of just hang out with the family. I'm going to try and do that, but I'm sure I'll
Nice.
try to go back to some work. Or my wife likes to use AI for me to use it to help us pick good restaurants and things of that nature. But I think that, I like to put my computers down and get some rest this weekend. So, Sam, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I don't know if I'm going to have a lot of comments related to AI, but what I'm going to comment about is Blue Jays. Okay.
Go for it.
So in this case, I guess, obviously they are doing really good. And the only explanation I have related to Blue Jays, why they are doing this good, because this is the same team that did really bad last year. Okay. So the only explanation is going to be AI. How it is helping, I don't know, but something is working for them. So go ahead, Robert. Sorry.
Sounds great. I mean, I'm a St. Louis Cardinal fan, and they are not. They were doing well, and then they kind of faltered, and I think that they're probably going to be a seller. But the more the Blue Jays can turn the corner, that'd be great. They haven't had a successful year. Have they been to the World Series before? I don't think so. Have they?
Blue Jays?
Yeah.
Oh, long time. Yeah.
So let's get them off the schneid here and get some good players and turn the corner. So I'll jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, and the only thing I'm going to say, Robert, here is, Cardinals, they need to figure out how to use AI.
I agree. I mean, I've told that story. I can't get them to use it. I mean, Google says that they give all the data to all the teams. Google and Major League Baseball, they use Google Analytics and the Google Cloud for that. And I don't know. We'll have to see what they're doing. Maybe they just don't have the team that we need them to have. So.
Yeah. Amazing,
All
guys.
right.
So that's it for the show. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our Analysts Gone Grumpy, which is the title that Donald had coined. And hopefully we were grumpy enough in the show. And if you want to see us grumpier, then see us next time. We'll be here on Thursday, 11 o'clock Eastern. Thank you so much once again for dialing in.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks.